You're just starting out on your Google Ads journey. You just get started. You're starting to read all these articles, these blogs. You're confused and you're wondering, what tips can I get as a beginner in Google Ads? And what I'm going to talk about in this video is what I would tell my younger self, if I can go back in time, what I would tell myself when I was just starting out with Google Ads, and the tips I'd give myself that have really benefited me in my own personal experience. By the way, my name is Silvio Perez and I create content every week on PPC advertising. So if you like that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Now, the first thing I would tell my younger self is to create a task list. I mean, I can't tell you, when you're just starting out in Google Ads, everything can become very overwhelming. There's so many different things you're reading from blog articles or YouTube videos like this, or just courses you're taking or whatever it might be, but there's so much information out there and there's so many different things people say you should be doing when it comes to your accounts that you can get overwhelmed really fast. So something that's really helped me tremendously in my journey in improving my Google Ads account and becoming a better Google Ads campaign manager is having a task list. It's so easy when we jump into our Google Ads accounts to get overwhelmed or to get distracted. But by having a task list, basically a to-do list of the things you need to do every week, every 2 weeks, or every month, depending on what your schedule allows, so that when you go into your accounts, you have a game plan and you can check it off as you go and you can be more effective with your time. I remember when I was just starting out, to give you a real example, it would take me forever to just manage one account. And I remember at the time I was really struggling just to manage, 1 to 3 accounts because I had no organization and I didn't have a task list in place. So what I would do is I would get into the accounts, and instead of being very concise on what it is I need to do and getting it done, for example, doing things like bid changes, right? So you should be doing bid changes often if you're using manual CPC bidding, or adding negative keywords and looking through your search terms report, things like that, or ad testing and creating new ad copy so you can be testing it on a consistent basis. I remember I would just hop into my accounts and I would get lost in the audience data or something. There's so many shiny buttons in the Google Ads interface that it's so easy to get lost and confused. So creating a task list is by far the number one thing I would tell myself going back, is create a task list. So that way when you go into these accounts, you're much more effective and you get what needs to be done. And the other thing as well is, in your task list, something that's really helped me is scheduling the time frame for certain things. So for example, like some things like ad testing, for example, I let it run for about 2 weeks. And depending on the size of your account, maybe that's too much, but ad testing I usually let run for 2 weeks so I can get enough data. So before, when I didn't have that frame of mind, of that structure, if you will, of okay, every 2 weeks we're going to review our ad test, and having it in my task list, I would be so quick to make decisions and I would jump really quickly. I wouldn't allow things to accumulate and to accrue the data required to be able to make a statistically significant decision. So the number one thing I would tell my younger self as a beginner is create a task list. It's really going to allow you to ease your mind with the overwhelm, and it's really going to allow you to be more effective when you go into your accounts and allow you to leverage yourself in a more effective way so that you can manage more accounts and take on more work. The second thing I would tell myself is to schedule maintenance. I'm sure you guys probably heard this, but the number one thing really when it comes to improving your accounts, the number one thing really, it comes to the amount of attention you give your accounts. So the second thing I would tell myself is create a schedule. I use Google Calendar and I schedule into my Google Calendar when I need to manage certain accounts, and I have that set up every week for all the different accounts I have. Routine management scheduled in alongside with that task list is a very powerful combination that's really going to allow you to drive success with your Google Ads campaigns or your clients' Google Ads campaigns. If you manage it for other people, that's really going to allow you to leverage the success of your time and making sure that these accounts get the attention they require. I remember I used to work back in the agency world before I started doing this full time on my own, and I remember in the agency world there was a lot of accounts that these agencies would take on, and they say that they're getting the attention they require, but they really aren't. And the reason why is because there is no task list in place and there is no routine scheduled maintenance. So make sure you really do schedule in that maintenance. And something as well is, when it comes to success with Google Ads, it's really, don't get lost in all the shiny objects and the crazy like A/B test or like the latest fad or trend or whatever. It really is just the fundamental stuff, like making sure you're getting in the right searches, making sure your keywords, more money is being spent to the keywords that are providing returns and less money to the keywords that aren't working. You know, it really is that foundational stuff, just like anything else in life, right? Like if it's diet and weight loss, it's foundational stuff. You know, it's eat well, work out, exercise. It's no different when it comes to improving your Google Ads campaigns. It is that foundational stuff that's really going to allow you to drive success over the long term. And having that task list with those to-dos you got to do, whatever that time frame is, and scheduling into some sort of calendar system and keeping yourself accountable is really going to allow you to get ahead and really make sure you're having some awesome Google Ads campaigns. And then the last thing I would tell myself, if I can go back in time, and this is something that I kind of just did naturally, because how I got started with Google Ads was I had a DJ service business that I started with my cousin, and I used that business to learn Google Ads to get more parties for our business. So this is something that I kind of did naturally, and I'm grateful that I did. But if I had to tell someone, what I would tell them is to dive in. Don't just, you know, get caught up in learning and studying and stuff. Like, for example, I didn't even know there was a Google Ads certification until I decided to do this as a career and go full on, that I learned about the certification. But I didn't even know it was a thing. And there's so many people that I've talked to, that I've came across over this time, that you know, they don't start until they get Google Ads certified or until they finish some course. There's always something inhibiting them from actually getting inside an account and getting real experience. And that's how you're really going to learn. I'll give you a great example. When I started in the beginning, I remember specifically the problems I encountered. And the first problem I had was I could never see my ad. My ad was never being shown. So that kind of leads you to a question of, okay, well, why isn't my ad being seen? So then you learn things about things like ad rank, how ad rank works and how that's factored in. And then one problem, you solve it and it leads you to the next one. So the next one was, okay, my ads are getting impressions, they're getting seen, but nobody's clicking on my ads. What's going on here? So then that leads you to learn things about, well, how do you get people to click on your ads? Oh, you got to make sure you write compelling ad copy. So how do you write ad copy? And then you solve that problem. And oh, there's these things called ad extensions that make your ads bigger and provide the user with more information. So then you learn about ad extensions, and then one problem you solve it, and then you solve the next problem, you solve the next problem, you solve the next problem, and before you know it, you are, you know, killing the game, and you're just making some great campaigns. And it never stops. You're always solving problems as you go. So that's the last tip I would give a beginner, is to dive in. Yes, do your research. Yes, study, but I would say go head in first, right? And then, you know, figure it out on the way. And that's really the biggest thing I would tell you. And the other thing as well, when it comes to just getting started, if you don't have the luxury of your own business that you can create your own Google Ads campaigns, if I didn't have that, what I would do is I would just reach out to local businesses and offer to work for free. There's nothing wrong with that if you're just getting started, and be fully transparent with them. Just say, hey, look, I just started learning about Google Ads, and I just took this course and I learned all this great information, and I would love to apply this to your business. But to be quite honest with you, this is my first time doing this. So if you're comfortable with that, you know, it'll be free of charge, but I will be here every step of the way, and I guarantee you that I will make it work. You know, so you can get started and you get experience, and you can start building case studies and testimonials and all that good stuff. But honestly, I remember it like it was yesterday, you know, so I can really resonate with that on, you know, you're just starting out and it's so overwhelming, especially with the world of the internet we live in, and paid advertising can be so confusing and so complex. But honestly, getting a task list, scheduling routine maintenance, and diving in and learning as you go is the best tips I can give you, that I think of, right now. And then the other thing too that kind of just popped in my head right now is focus on the fundamentals always. And when it comes to paid advertising and paid search, something I really want to emphasize to you is, at the end of the day, all we're doing is we're getting the right message to the right person at the right time. That's it. So whether we do that with Google Ads or we do that with Facebook ads, those different platforms are just tools. So don't get so caught up in the tool itself that you don't understand the big picture on what's going on. So learn things like psychology and marketing psychology, and the different stages of the buying process, and how people go from not knowing who you are to having familiarity with you to making a decision. So really understand the psychology of what's going on, so that way you can transcend just the platform you're in. I remember early on, because I just started with Google Ads, that was the first platform I did, I was so focused on Google Ads, and I didn't really understand why I was offering a free consultation and why a free consultation would work versus when I would go to something like Facebook and offer a free consultation, it just fell on its face and it would never work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because the luxury of search engines is you're bidding on keywords where people already have that desire. They already want to see a doctor or see a plumber or whatever it might be. So that way, in that case, a free consultation is a great offer because they already have that intent and that desire. So you're meeting them with where they're at. First, if you go to like social media, for example, they might be interested in, let's say, plumbing but it doesn't mean they have that desire and they're ready to take that step. So on social media, you're probably gonna have to offer them something less threatening and then kind of transition them from that point. So I hope that makes sense. But really, those are the tips I would give a beginner, and what I would tell my younger self is, again, number one, get a task list. Number two, make sure you schedule routine maintenance in some sort of calendar system and hold yourself accountable and actually do it. Routine management is the key. And then the third one was to just dive in and get in there and really get your hands-on experience. And as you encounter problems, look up solutions. So don't just learn to learn to apply. Apply the information you're receiving, and that way you'll move forward faster. So that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you got some value from this. If you did, feel free to like the video. That really helps me out so more people can see this kind of information. It really helps with the algorithm on YouTube so my video gets ranked higher. So I would really appreciate that if you got some value from this. And if you like content like this on Google Ads, on pay-per-click advertising, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well. I create content every week. I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Take care.